So I thought I'd give color pencil a try. I just kind of started, you can see where I started, just really super loose. And I haven't measured anything. And I don't think I'm going to. I think I'm going to just, I, I don't care if even the proportions are off. I'm just going to have a little fun with this. And if it ends up looking like the model, well, that's great. If it doesn't, I don't really care. So just like I would in charcoal, I just starting really light. Now, if you're a watercolorist, you could appreciate this. Just starting super thin, just very very thin, and I'm really just thinking about shape relationships. I'm not thinking about any form of structure. I'm hoping that all the times I've worked with the portrait in the past, or the face, or just any drawing, I'm hoping comes through and prevents me from drawing an alien. So as I map these shapes out, I am mapping, comparing. You can use different terms for that. I'm comparing in those, like in that image, I think that's actually her hair, but it leaves this here, and then you got the shadow shape here. So I'm taking all of the shapes into consideration here. I'm hopefully using the light and shadow patterns to help build this up somewhat accurately. And I'm just looking at, I'm just taking in general, general proportions of thirds, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 of the chin. I'm in there somewhere, and I think the model, without actually measuring that, I think she fits in that thirds category. When my figure drawings took on a kind of a more expressive look, I'm trying to remember kind of what I was doing, what was going through my head, and I guess it's just you just kind of have to let go. It's a scary thing, but the measuring, the control, everything that you kind of do, you kind of have to just let go of it. Kind of a strange place to be at first. It's not a comfortable place to be, but I think it's a good way to grow. I definitely have her a little bit longer. She's got more width right through here, but again, at this point, I think I'm going to probably keep it there. And I'm just looking at little things like there's slightly downturned eyes. So I'm going to maybe exaggerate that just a little bit. And, really nice shapes up there under the eyebrows. And get the eyelids in there. I'm probably not going to push this very dark. That's another thing that I've been working with in what I'm doing is I'm trying to really control the contrast and the values. I'm so used to going dark. I'm so used to pushing my values. I thought it'd be kind of fun just to keep everything in a little bit of a light, kind of a light area of value. And that's another thing I like about color pencil, because it is kind of difficult to go dark with it. It keeps you in that light area, those lighter values. Let's see, she's looking right at the viewer. Block those in first, and we'll see how that looks. A lot of this eye is going to be in shadow back here into those eyelashes. So that side, that nostril falls inside that shadow. So one of the things I really like about this is I like that shadow drapes out, meets back with that wing of the nose there, and all just falls into that shadow. I think I'm probably going to, let's see, change that a little bit. I think I'm going to probably push that shadow. Maybe that'll be one of the darker spots. I'm not sure. I don't know. That kind of goes against what I just said, though, doesn't it? But in general, I think everything on here is going to be pretty light. So traditionally, when I do, I guess, drawings, I've really worked on, I work on a tone paper, and then I work with charcoal and then chalk, and push the lights and the darks. And I guess I might actually add some highlights to this, but just in general, these color pencil, the work I do with color pencil just tends to be a little bit lighter. So I'm always wondering, how much to leave light, how much paper should I leave coming through, and so how dark do I want to take all of my values, and what do I want to leave alone? It's always a question, and I don't have an answer yet for that, so I just keep experimenting. Again, I mentioned watercolor. This is a little bit like watercolor. Knowing, you want to reserve the brightest areas and just let the paper be that bright area. And so you kind of have to push everything else down around it. But then I always wonder with these color pencil pieces I do, how far, how much paper do I want to leave? How much form do I want to turn? I do like the idea of them just being a little bit more like a sketch. So there's just not so much information in them. You can't really smear color pencil too much, but it does smear out just a little bit. But it always makes me wonder, do I want to cross hatch? Do I want to hatch them down? I never really quite know what to do. So it's just always kind of a little bit of an experiment. I do generally like going, if I hatch, I like going across the form, but I think it's kind of fun to do a little bit of both. I think one of the things I was definitely thinking about with this is line weight, playing with the line. So my traditional approach of charcoal and chalk on toned paper, I think I get a little bit better grasp of the values I'm going after, and I'm also, I'm a lifelong smudger. I just, everything I do, I always smudge. I smudge everything, and with color pencil, you get a lot less of that. You can smudge it just a little bit, but it really, because it's a waxy medium, it likes to stay put. So it really forces me to think a little bit more about my value as I lay it down at first, and hopefully teaches me a little patience. Very much like graphite in the same regard. It's just a slower medium, and you have to think a little bit more about your line or your mark making. What you're putting down. There's um, it's just more of a linear medium, I suppose. And I think maybe just finding a few areas to push down darker is probably what I'm after. You can layer color pencil up quite nicely, again, just like graphite, but it just takes a little more patience, and a little more patience than I'm used to. So, charcoal, you can just get in there and really get it down dark quick and fast, and a little smudging, a little pushing and pulling. You can add a lot of atmosphere to it, and with this, it just don't get that atmosphere so easily. So I'm just always kind of thinking about how much tone am I going to lay down, or how little can I get away with and still turn form to make kind of make it look three-dimensional. So I think the other challenge, another reason why I've changed up mediums a little bit more, is I would like to rely a little bit more on the light of the paper to be the lightest spots, and not relying on chalk to come in here and put a highlight in. But I might still do that, because I do have a toned paper here. So it does give me an opportunity to just find maybe one or two really bright spots to add, a real snappy highlight. We've got a really nice bright highlight in that in her left eye, and so that might be something I'll come in and just kind of put in toward the end. We'll see if that kind of adds an extra little dimension to it. But yeah, but generally I'm trying to just let the paper control all the value. So I'm just always trying to learn a new skill set. You get used to doing something one way, and you get comfortable doing it. It's a comfortable way. You can accomplish, mostly accomplish what you set out to do, because you're familiar with the method and the medium. But I think it's always really fun to kind of challenge yourself to try new mediums, new methods, new approaches, and that's kind of what keeps me going. So I guess that's why I was willing to do something that I'm not that comfortable doing, and doing it on film. So I guess it doesn't really matter what medium I use. Um, I'm always, and I guess this is more drawing than painting, although I guess it doesn't really need to be, but is, how much line do you want to use? Because you could really do drawing and I'd have to say, I'm going to air quote this and make it realistic by not using really any line. Remembering that line, outlining something versus edge. Edges do exist, but not line. Line's a concept. And it seems like in drawing, quite often we rely on line quite heavily. But you really could do a drawing with no conceptual line, and it just all become very a tonal drawing. So I'm always asking myself, when I start a drawing, how much line do I want to put in? How many, do I want to edge it with a line? Do I want to just let it go into a softness? There's a myriad of options there. And it's actually fun to go back and forth a little bit. On one drawing, I might do a lot of line, make it look a little more graphic, and then the next drawing, a lot less line. But I've always been kind of drawn to line, and it's something I'm working to put more into my paintings now too, not just my drawings. We get into the those shadowy areas, and we really want to look into them really hard. You want to see more, but and that I think is the natural inkling. But when you get into those, especially those shadowy areas, I think it's a good reminder to squint. And if you can't see it, even if it's just from a photograph, knowing that the photograph is not giving us even remotely the amount of information working from life is going to give you. But you taking that into consideration. In the dark areas, the photograph's going to drop out a lot of information, and so you're going to have that inkling to really look into those shadows. But I think for the most part, if you can't see it, just let it go. Well, it's always a little unnerving to start a project in front of the camera. You really don't know how it's going to turn out. And then there's always those, I think every piece I've ever done has gone through an awkward stage. I think it's just the nature of what you're working on. Rarely does one not go through that awkward stage. And then, the question is it going to come out? What's it going to come out on the other side? And sometimes they don't turn out. Sometimes they do. So, yeah, on film, you watch that, that awkward stage, going through that awkward stage, and you think, oh man, what am I doing? And I've probably deleted more footage than I should have, just based off that. And had I kept going with the piece, it probably would have worked out just fine. But I said in the beginning I wasn't sure. Color pencil being kind of new to color pencil, I'm never really quite sure how far to take it. And this is also the $60,000 question is, we're getting into that territory. When is it done? So I guess I did turn form a little bit more than I was thinking. With all the little subtle areas. And I mentioned also earlier in the beginning that how color pencil is not smudgeable. It is to a certain degree. You can smudge it around, and I was able to get a paper towel and run it around in the hair, which kind of gave it a little bit of a tone, which actually I quite like that. I think it softened the hair a little bit. And I like the way it's just lighter at the bottom, and the darks. I always did want the darks to go in around her face, which is the dark hair. So you kind of use that as a foil against the light skin. And it's a look I quite like. I think it's quite effective. I don't think her ear doesn't really stick out that much, but soften that line just a little bit. And it really is kind of nice. There was a couple times here where like I had that, I thought just too dark. I think my eye was just going to that tuft of hair, and it was even here, I just felt like it was a little dark. So I just erased those off and put them back in a little lighter. But just how do you want to finish some of those lines in there? It's entirely up to you. I guess I kind of like turning form. I like spending a little time modeling. I guess the word is modeling those little forms a little bit. Ended up going a little darker with the eyes. I think that one highlight, in the photo, that's really bright. And this is just an acrylic paint pen. And that's that one highlight that, is kind of snaps. I think the second brightest highlight is actually the one on the lip, but I don't want it to compete with that one. But I think more important than the lip is that highlight. And that does, have a little bit of paint pen in it. It doesn't really want to stick. What would happen if I, push that up a little brighter? Oh, that's not too bad. I don't think it competes with the eye. It doesn't compete with the eye because the eye, or the iris, has so much dark around it. So it's just creating a lot more contrast. And then these little areas like that, just pick them right back to the paper. I always work with an eraser. I think no matter what medium, I've always got an eraser in my hand. I kind of love what an eraser does. And maybe it's kind of inefficient because I guess in a way it's going backwards. You're taking things away that you've added, but I like the randomness that it adds. The little bit of destruction and then rebuild. So I'm always smudging things, and I'm always using an eraser. So just that one for those little areas, and I have that a little bit larger one. You want to pull some of these, just a few of those tendrils back out. I always think that's kind of a nice look. Just a couple, I'd say don't go overboard with it. But I'm never, I guess maybe because I've never been a watercolorist, I've never been that good at planning out those highlight areas. I always come back later and and work back into them. It's like with oil paint. That's using your white. You don't have to reserve anything. So I just haven't really ever. Um, that skill set's never really been exercised very much, I guess, with me. And that even goes for the charcoal. The charcoal with the chalk. Always got that white to come back in and put on top. So that's been my comfort zone. Yeah, I guess at this point, everything I put in now is just going to become a little bit more. Yeah, I don't want to use that word rendering this. I mean, I'm happy with how everything's turned out. I mean, you got tones down in here on the neck. Could work that just a little bit, but the more I put in, the more I feel like it is, becoming a little bit more of a rendering. And I just want this maybe turning into a graphic. Maybe more realism up there, and then down here maybe a little more of a graphic, simplistic feel. I don't really want to get into, I don't want to get into the anatomy, the clavicles and everything in there, but it's finding an interesting way to maybe represent that there's something going on there without being too literal. I don't know. Sketchy, just a little sketchy is what I'm after. Just keeping it really light. Do not want anything to distract from the face. So no contrast down here. I think that's pretty much about it. I think there's just some little things maybe to mop up or wrap up here and there. Maybe even put it against the wall for a while. Maybe come back out and work on it a little bit. Find a couple spots I can punch in an extra few darks. Be kind of fun, especially around the face. Just gonna really kind of make that face pop off the, just make it pop off the, oh, I know what I was going to do. Let's put this in. I've drawn very few moles. Let's see if we can get it to look like a mole. So there's actually a highlight on it. Try not to be too literal with it. That might work, something kind of like that. Well, I think that's it for this. I'm just going to plug away a little bit at it, just like I always say, and then probably spend too much more time on it. But I don't really think I'm close. I think putting it aside for a day or two and then getting it back out and then just seeing kind of like what catches my eye. I think that's a good thing if you can do that with all of your work. Just get that fresh eye on it, take something out, or usually it's take something out. I think that's more often, it doesn't need more. It's usually just something that, oh, maybe a dark spot that's too dark, or, well, I guess it could even be like in a portrait if it doesn't quite read, some eyes too high or mouth's crooked. you kind of catch things like that too. But I think just generally it's more, kind of those values. So yeah, I think I'll just do that. I'll kind of put it against the wall for a while, and then get it back out, hit anything that catches my eye, and then call it done. So, all right. Well, thanks for watching.